Hey, can you hear me?
Nice shirt.
I know, right? I should see if I
I
can
just
make
put mine on. I was like, oh, I should definitely put my people swag on, obviously.
Try putting my computer on top of this bowl.
Yep.
I can almost see it.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, so I don't know if you want to. Can I share the screen?
Are you on the desktop version?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
It looks different. But I don't know because I'm not the host.
So actually, let's see. On your little like bar up at the top where it says like, do you see like a green bar? It says sharing my camera, dial in, number, access code. Okay. Under that, do you see like a play button?
No.
Okay. I mean, I'm okay to
Can you
run the slideshow. It's just the thing I can't, yeah.
If you click on the attendee list, can you give me access to do it? Or if you hit play, can you choose somebody else to do it?
It says switch presenter, so let's just
try switching presenter to me. Okay, yes. Oh, golly.
I don't know what it did, but I just did press that.
Yeah.
And then there was one other option.
Google Slides.
It says becoming presenter. So, oh, okay, maybe.
I don't know what I'm showing right now.
It's your Window Defender firewall. Has blocked some features in this app.
Not probably what I want. If you can.
I think you might be right. Oh.
Okay. I think I just have too many tabs open so I couldn't find the presentation.
Only have this one on the presentation. You can do it.
Well, I need the agenda too.
Oh, that's true.
That's the only problem.
Let's see. I think I am going to mute everyone. So, Katie, will you unmute yourself when I do it?
Yes. Star 6?
Yeah. You press star 5.
Okay. I pressed it. Okay.
Okay. I'm going to do it. Just one.
Hi. Hey, Amy. Hello?
Okay, try talking again. Can you are you on your phone? Press star 6. Hold on. It says everyone's unmuted.
Yeah, I just heard the unmuted announcement. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Oh.
Katie, try talking.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe we can start with asking everybody to mute, and then if it becomes a problem, we can figure it out from there.
Okay, sounds good.
So if you are on, if you want to introduce yourself and then mute, you can try that. I'm not sure who the 512 number is.
I just said Chris.
Yeah, the desktop version, for whatever reason, doesn't have the keypad. I'm not sure why.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Andrew thought it was 9 o'clock, so at 9 o'clock he's like, where is everyone?
Excuse me.
Hey,
Oh,
Anna,
mute.
welcome to the meeting.
What everybody can talk? Must be getting close. If you are on and want to introduce yourself, feel free.
Hi, it's Talina.
Mina.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the call.
Feel free to introduce yourself and then throw yourself on mute if you don't mind. And feel free to put your video on if you'd like.
I don't want to lose any learning at this point. Good. Must have more gold. Absolutely. My guy knows our modus operandi right now. Okay, thank you, Wukong Bunch. 5 more gold. Get out.
Hey, Andrew.
Good.
Hello.
Is that everybody gone? Nice.
Mike
What
Rukowski.
more gold go around? I think shrines everywhere.
Hi, Mike.
Something is
Do you
making
have-
noise.
Background noise, Andrew?
They all sprung up instantly. I was going to say we'll wait for those to go. So if we actually get here, these resistance, do you think this would be lower?
I gave you.
And feel free to introduce yourself and put yourself on mute. Also, feel free, if you're joining my computer, to throw your video camera on if you'd like. We can all see each other.
Hey, this is Cindy.
Hey, Cindy.
Hey, good evening. It's Rachel.
Hello.
Hey, Rachel.
Hey, this is Jen.
Hi, Terry
Hello.
here.
Hello.
Hi, this is Kathy.
Kathy.
Hey, Kathy.
Ding, ding.
Hi.
Sounds like a fun lottery game. And just so everyone knows, we are recording this, so we'll be able to put it out on our website later on Facebook. So just so everyone knows that we are up and running.
Hey, everybody. Oops. Mario. You guys there? Andrew
Yep,
says
we're here, Andrew.
Andrew says your web camera's off.
Yeah.
That says my camera's off?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it says. I see Katie.
Can you see me now?
Andrew,
No.
you're showing up for me.
Really?
Really?
Yeah. Sitting
I see Mike
by
or
Black
UCAM
window.
5. Please start UCAM.
There you
Yeah,
are.
there we
we
go,
go.
Andrew.
There you are, Andrew.
You shaved today?
That's
Need more
Mike's
light on my
screen,
face.
it looks like.
This lighting in this room is terrible.
It's evening. We're all having that problem, I think.
I'll make up immediately.
By a light.
Just turn your screen brightness up too, you could.
Oh yeah, screen brightness. That's good.
You're not used to have to do your
Hello?
work.
How do you see video?
If you're logged on the online link, the calendar invite Sarah sent out, it says join the online meeting, and there it says link, and so you'll just click on that, and it'll take you to freeconferencecall.com, and we are up here.
And then you
So
click
you
on
have
the
to.
camera. You click on
So
the
you
video
have to have a. You have to have a sign on to be able to do that.
Nope, you don't. Nope. It'll just ask for your name and then to connect to your phone number so that it can connect who's talking if you're calling in on your phone.
Mine just showed a New Hampshire number. It said no webcam.
Let's be Terry.
Right there.
Hi.
And if you want to introduce yourself and then put yourself on mute unless you have a question. We don't get too much feedback.
Oh, hey, Katie, how are you feeling?
You'll probably hear me coughing throughout, but better than I was for sure. Thanks for asking.
All right, well, I'm praying for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a long couple of weeks. My dad was sick. Now I'm sick. But got caught in the rain. So I think that's why. Speaking of which.
Okay, I'm going to try to sign in where you can see my face.
Sounds great.
269.
That's Tony Catanza, right?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Yep.
Okay.
Mario.
All right. Looks like we probably have most people who will be joining. So if you haven't said hi yet, if you want to say hi, and then if you can put your phone on mute or click the mute button on your computer, that would be great. But we'd love to hear from anybody else who's joined us.
All right, well, Tony's going to mute, and I'm going to try to find my way to see everybody while I'm on mute.
Anybody else out there who hasn't said hi?
Hi, it's Julian.
Hey, Julian.
Hey, Julian.
Hi.
All right. Great. And Andrew, I don't know if you want to kick us off, and then Paige, maybe after our intro, we can share. We can try sharing my screen or sharing your screen for the PowerPoint.
Sounds good.
Great.
Sounds good. Can everybody hear me and everybody see me?
Who's that? There you are.
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. Well, I just want to welcome everybody. We wanted to gather, even if virtually. So this is our first official gathering since DC, and because we're recording this, hopefully everybody who's not able to be here live will be able to watch. And we wanted to gather for a host of reasons. First off, we wanted to keep up the momentum that we had from really an incredible few days. I think so many people just commented on how moving it was, how inspiring it was, how surprising it was that we came together in such a short time, really connected and got to know each other and got to see each other and got something really important done. So I think that those two elements will always be what guides our effort. We will constantly want to connect and try to build community that has been dying in our country, and we will want to forge a path forward in how we take action to change our country. So the action piece and the connection piece will always go hand in hand. So that's hopefully a little bit of what we're doing tonight. And I think we're going to want to do this at least on a quarterly basis, where everybody gets to hear an update of where we are, where we're going, and be able to ask questions, raise concerns. So we're going to go through an agenda tonight that hopefully addresses a lot of that. Just gives you an update on what we've been doing, what we've accomplished, which has been quite considerable, what our plan is for the next 6 months. As I was talking to a few of the participants, many said, this first 6 months is so crucial for us to set us straight, set us on the right path, and make sure that we have the strength that we're going to need to make sure that this grows properly, and we have the decision-making process to make sure it grows properly, and we make sure we are always kind of on the same team. I think in that little poem that I read the first night in D.C., I talked about several tribes becoming one, and I hope tonight, even as we talk, we want to make sure that what we gained in D.C. continues, this idea that there really is and can never be different teams. There can never be our way, their way, somebody's going to be up, somebody's going to be down. We're done with that. So, and I know that some of those habits die hard. So we're gonna dig into that a little bit. Just make sure that we make sure that we are using all of our energy for positive gain. So we'll dig into a little bit some of the emotions and things that people have been feeling. I know people are chomping at the bit. They want to do a lot. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we want you to do and need you to do, and what we definitely don't want you to do and need you to do. Part of that is really for us to be clear on all those fronts. We'll give you some great news about some of the PR that we're going to be doing that's going to be very important in our narrative and our storytelling. We'll talk about rollout plans to pilot states. And we'll talk about the committees that have been happening and all the ways that you all have been participating, which has been phenomenal. So with that, I just want everybody to know that we are as invested and as excited as we've ever been. We feel even more confident with the number of people that we've spoken to within our group and outside of our group that our idea and what we're trying to do is both revolutionary and doable. I think that's a big part of this, is whether we really believe that we can spread our grassroots effort across the country and actually create the changes and the reforms that we kind of envisioned in DC. So with that, I'll pass it off to Paige and to Katie, and we'll start going through some of the details at the end. And people can chime in if they want to, but it might be better at the end to really let everybody ask questions and dig in and pose. You can say anything. There's nothing off grounds. We want you to be honest about any of your concerns or anything that you think might help the group. And the last thing I'll say is there's been a bunch of people who have come forward with ideas and suggestions, and it's been very helpful. It's definitely shifted some of our strategies and made us think about better ways to operate. So keep all those suggestions coming.
Yep, and we will be covering the questions you guys did already submit too. So thank you for anybody who did that. And we're going to try and keep the call somewhat short, especially for those of us on the East Coast, but lots of updates to come too. Paige, I don't know if you want to throw the PowerPoint up or if you want me to try to. I just emailed it to everybody, but we'll be sharing it from the screen too to give an update. Paige?
Yep.
You're working on it. Got it. Cool.
These are all the technological things that we will be getting really good at as we keep doing this.
Also, Andrew, I had a question. Are you sitting on a beanbag chair?
it looks a little like one. It's my daughter's chair here.
I have my niece has a leopard print beanbag chair that the pattern looks familiar. So.
The whole family's in the other room watching Outlander. I've been banished to my daughter's room.
Nice. Okay. So Paige, since you're leading it, I'll probably just tell you when to turn to the next slide. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, so you can go to the next slide. Okay, so our PowerPoint's going to go over what we've accomplished so far, high level, our forward focus to explain the strategy. I know on some of the committee calls we cover some elements of this, but we realize not all of them. And as Andrew mentioned, we're trying to do at least quarterly update meetings to give an update on where everybody's at. In the future, we'll be definitely giving more notice, and actually what we're going to try and do is do a Zoom call where we could actually break out into committees while on that call. But that's all for forward-facing things. Then we want to give a national level update and a committee update, as well as share that exciting news you were talking about and answer questions. Perfect. So what we've accomplished so far, this is very high level, and we'll go into some more details after this, but we created a Declaration of the People. That is on our website if you haven't seen it. I know you guys all got a copy too. We've established 5 regions and regional councils to focus our efforts. We realize that having 1 to 2 people in each state is a little hard to just hit the ground running on your own. So trying to use the regional support system so that we can start building those successes to spread out into all of the states. We've established 6 operational committees. We just came up with committee standards, but that have been working tirelessly. We actually had 7, but our 4th of July committee is kind of merging into the social media and marketing committee. Thank you guys, though, for all of your hard work if you're on that committee. Exciting updates there. We've been highlighted in the news 5 times since our DC effort, which you can find on the link in the PowerPoint if you want. It can actually be found on our website under In the News. And we've developed a governance structure, which we will be going over too. Next slide. The regional councils, I think most people are familiar with this, but basically the concept was we're trying to get somebody on each of our 6 committees, which are fundraising, governance, listen, learn, action, score, policy, social media and marketing, and IT and technology. We're trying to get one person from each of who lives in one of the states within each region on each of these committees so that the regional council can have information coming in from all 6 committees, and all 6 committees can work on successes together for each region. Most of these regional councils, we have pretty good coverage. There are some where we're still waiting to fill in more people. Then we'll actually be sending out an email about that by the end of this week. We'll be actually starting to meet with our regional councils starting next week, which is exciting. But the thought is, we know not everybody has enough time to be on 6 different calls, and in this very early phase of there just being a couple of us from each state, we need to figure out how can we best work together to help create systems and ways to plug in more people to take action not only locally but nationally. And this is kind of what that structure looks like there. Go to the next one, please. Thank you. You go to the next one. So our strategy, we had a lot of goals coming out of DC and for the organization to begin with. So we wanted to create an engaged movement in each state that promotes dialogue leading to action on democracy and how do we actually fix the system. So we definitely not only learned in DC how to talk to one another, but also we learned how to actually create something together. And that's how we really want to be different than some other organizations. It's great to have conversations and figure out where we have common ground, but if we're not actually doing anything to change the system, then we know it's not actually getting better and more representative for us. As we saw that chart that continuously shows that the average American doesn't actually have an impact on policies that happen in our country. We want to be changing that, which means we need to figure out where we agree, what we want to do, and then actually go and do it. We want to work to identify shared values and concerns of the people in each state across the country. So we started with that in the National Declaration, and now part of our state listening scores will be doing that at the state level. We want to create an action plan once we figure out what those shared concerns are to figure out how do we do something about that. Then we want to also be countering the narrative that Democrats, Republicans, and average citizens are too divided to actually work together and have common ground, and then provide programming for anybody in the country. We continue to get better at that, but making sure that we have an organization that can actually reach folks no matter where they're at. So when the team was looking at this and we were trying to think about, okay, how do we actually organize our program areas? What does this equate to? We saw three main themes of what the people said we want to do. And we broke those down into listening, learning, and acting. So for listening, we want to give a voice to the American people. We want to actually create a space and opportunities for people to have their voices heard, to have their where we can talk about our concerns, where we can talk about our hopes. But we don't want to just be able to speak and listen. We want to actually be able to learn. So the learn is the second main part, where we want to identify common ground and where do our different shared stories overlap and hopes for the country overlap. And we also, for part of this learning phase, want to identify what are the root causes for why we aren't seeing progress made. If we all agree that we want clean water, why don't we have clean water? What? Are you okay, Paige?
Yeah, sorry. The door just fell over.
That's okay. I hope you're okay.
So sorry.
That's okay. I thought you were really excited about learning. So for learning, also we want to learn how are the different ways that we as people across the country, how can we work together to take these actions? And then finally, actually acting on them. So how can we use the political process to take that common ground that we've identified and do something about it? How can we organize also to push politicians and different systems to be responding to what the people actually want? So on the next slide, we take those three categories of listen, learn, act, and break down our programs and our committees. What are we actually doing in relation to what we said we wanted to be doing? So for the listening phase, we had our declaration, our assembly, where we listened to people. We formed a national governance structure, which will take people from across the country and actually plug into a governance model. We have our social media conversation topics, where on our public-facing social media, we're promoting different dialogues for people to give their input. And then we're also sharing our stories through media. We have our podcast that'll be launching. We're doing different news opportunities. And then some of our social media things, like for 4th of July, where we actually highlighted how different people celebrate the 4th of July across the country. Those are all different ways that we're focusing our programming on listening. For learning, our policy team is analyzing our declaration and figuring out what are the different opportunities for changing this, what are the actual policies related to our visions and our concerns so that we can start to take action. We're also organizing countrywide polling and voting opportunities so that we continue to get feedback on how do people feel about different topics. And we have the IT committee, which is researching different collaboration tools so that we can continue to perfect how we do things like this meeting right now, but also for our governance structure. How do you get 2 people from all 50 states not to need to fly to DC every single time they want to have a conversation or take action together? So that's what IT committee is doing. And then in our acting part of our programming, we have the Listen, Learn, Action tours. We have the Us for Us social media challenge and other social media challenges. We started that with the 4th of July. We're thinking of other ways on how can we help encourage other people to take action? How can we highlight the action that we all are committed to taking with other people? And then our people parties that are working to raise awareness and funds for us. So let's go back to the previous slide page.
Just to jump in there, I think this structure was born out of a little bit what we saw in DC and really listening to you guys and saying, hey, what are the people saying they don't get to do? They don't get their voices heard. They don't get to be part of making sausage and learning and figuring out where is our common ground. And then they don't get to be the ones actually enacting the change. So these pieces are fundamental to the people owning whatever it is we do. It's fundamental to feeling empowered. It's fundamental to being smart and knowing our stuff. So when we actually do take action, we're not messing around. We're going in to actually change things. So I think that it's a good process. Obviously, we're going to continue to tweak it, but it's a phased approach for everything we do. And one thing that we've also started talking about is as excited and chomping at the bit as we all are, we're building something for the long term. This is something that is going to be around for a long time. The people are going to need to be organized and be a force for change for a long time to come. So we got to get this right and really going.
Yeah, and that leads us actually into the next slide, if you want to go to that page, which was when our team kind of looked at, okay, what do we need to do to become the organization that can do this into the future, not with just our first initial 100 folks, but all the people that we bring into the fold and other Americans who are also concerned and want to actually work together to make our country the country we want it to be. We laid out a plan, which kind of lines up with the Listen, Learn, Action, but with different phases. So for 2019, the biggest thing we need to do as an organization in order to succeed is catalyze Americans. We need to identify people in all 50 states who want to take action, and we also need to mobilize people in each region who are ready to take action. So a big part of that was the DC event, but it will continue to also be these Listen, Learn, Action tours, the social media challenges where we invite people in, and basically we need to recruit more people to help us do these programs and start to make the changes at the local level. But we really need to focus the rest of this year on how do we do that in a systematic way that's authentic, and we're able to build and integrate people who weren't in DC who want to help plug into our different committees, and also taking everybody who was in DC and moving into successes at the state level for different programs. So then from 2019 to 2020, we think then we need to take the teams and the people that we have found and really incubate them, but help us all learn the best practices and the standards, the community norms that we're going to build in order to create a successful infrastructure going into the future. So one example of that is us figuring out our social media norms and how are we going to use the Facebook group and what ways, how effective is the newsletter and what ways do we want to communicate. All of those things we have to establish and figure out what is the right way to use these tools. We have to do that now and into the future so that we can continue to build on what we're already doing. We also need to, we're creating a lot of things from scratch. So whether it's the toolkit for doing a listening tour or the training that we just did on how to write a letter to the editor. All of that stuff right now we as an organization are doing for the first time, but that's helping us build tools that we can use year after year for different programs and different opportunities into the future, and then we can also give other regular citizens access to so that they can use that for getting involved in the process too. And we're also a big focus for the end of this year and for 2020 is how do we create this process so that it can be replicated, so that when we are doing our pilot state tours, the Listen, Learn, Action tours, how do we create this process so that we can do 5 more states the next time or 10 more states the time after that. And then after that, for 2020 and 2021, we really want to be focusing on creating the network and our team as the people that can really provide assistance to actions that are already being taken. So as some of you guys have already, identified your topics for the listening tour, and we're going to go do the listening tour, and you figured out what is the action we want to take. By 2020, 2021, we want to be focused on how do we help just accelerate everything that you're doing and finding, if you need more funding, if you need access to a marketing team, whatever that is, how can we connect those as an organization?
Yeah. I like using analogies, and this may not be exactly right, but we brought together an all-star team in DC, and usually you already have a whole league created when you pick an all-star team. We picked the all-star team first, and then we said, okay, now we need to go create the league in all 50 states. So we need a team in every state, and so there's only going to be so many people that came to DC who are capable of going back and actually playing full-time ball. And so, we're figuring that out with all of you, and who wants to kind of be a supporter, who wants to be an advisor, who wants to be playing. But we are going to go out and create all those teams in every single state, and we're going to be figuring out how does this whole thing work? How does it all run, and how do we accomplish our goals? So we did it a little backwards, but it's going to work because you all are the example of what's possible.
And so then for 2019, if you want to go to the next slide page, the biggest project we're now focused on, which came out of DC and seemed to be the most popular idea, is this Listen, Learn, Action Tour. It used to be called just the Listening Tour, but that isn't what we're just doing. We're actually, using this tour to go across the state, talk to other people who are concerned about the same issue, identify that common ground at the local level, and then figure out how can we actually, if we want money out of politics in Ohio, then how are we going to actually get money out of politics in Ohio? So for this, though, there's kind of some different roles for different folks. So all of the committees, the 6 committees that we have, are going to be assisting and helping develop the actual process and content and infrastructure for these pilot states. We're trying to get at least one pilot state in all 5 regions. And so the committees, the work that they're doing, the way it's connected to each other, is it's helping create different elements of these listening tours. So for example, the listening tour committee is actually the people putting together the entire plan on the ground, making sure that we're going to be setting up the tours, doing logistics that way. But the policy committee is helping do research right now on whatever topic that listening tour is going to be on. So in Georgia, we're pretty sure it's going to be related to voting. In Ohio, we're pretty sure it's going to be related to transparency and spending in politics. And so the policy committee, their research is actually helping feed in content for the pilot tours to go and talk about in their state. So committees are focused on that throughout all 3 phases of the listening tour, which is the first phase is going around the state, listening and gathering data. The second is how do we take the data and all the people that we've talked to in that state and actually find common ground and figure out what is the one thing we think we can do to make change here. And then the third phase of the listening tour is actually taking the action. That's the act part of the tour. Are we going to pressure politicians to change this? Are we going to do a ballot initiative? Are we going to do a local initiative? Are we going to do a media campaign? What is the right thing that we think can actually make change in this topic? The regional councils then also play a role. So if you're on a committee, maybe if you could go back, sorry, Paige. If you're on a committee and you're one of the regional council leads for that committee, you're going to be helping focus on the pilot state and topic that is in your region. One, so that we can create a process that can actually be replicated, and so we need all hands on deck. And we also need planning support for the different regions. So even if you don't live in Ohio, but you're in the Midwest, if you're a regional council leader, how can you help focus on making sure that we're providing assistance to our other members in Ohio to make sure that since it's the very first time we're doing it, we're being as thoughtful as we can, we're being as professional as we can, and we're having as much success as we can. And that we're also taking the time to learn and figure out what are the best ways to do this since we're doing it for the first time. And then if you're a pilot state individual member, so I keep using Ohio as an example, I'll continue with that. So if you're somebody who lives in Ohio and that's a pilot state, we are asking that you actually assist on the ground with taking roles and responsibilities to help that pilot succeed. All of us will play different roles, but especially if you're in that state, we want kind of an all-hands-on-deck focus for this next year for the pilot states, so that, again, we can do it as best we can, and we're staying focused enough to actually make accomplishments and some wins on the local level. Instead of having, 5 projects to begin with, we really want to choose that one and get a lot of buy-in to do that one so that we have a template for moving forward. You can go to the next slide now, Paige. And so then related to why we're starting with the pilot states. The pilot states, again, the first part is 1 to 2 states in each of the 5 regions. Right now, I think we have 4 different states highlighted, but if you're still interested in being one of those pilot states, we can do that. I've kind of already talked about the point of that, and you guys can read this PowerPoint later too. But after we're done with that pilot phase, the plan is that then we now have this base amount of knowledge, materials we've created, we have a structure, we know best practices. So then 7 to 14 additional states or additional groups of people who want to work on a topic, and now after the pilots have concluded, do the second phase, which is our expansion phase, where we'll be able to focus on other things within the committees, but the people who are in the pilot states can act as guides to help the people who are just starting, and we can continue to refine our tools and processes before then we move into the final rollout, which should be theoretically that any state or any group of people who are really motivated and want to use this process for a local ordinance or statewide activity can actually use this, and we've perfected the process. And we, as the people, have really created a resource and a network that is going to help support other Americans in taking action in a really thoughtful way. And the whole structure to this really emphasizes how we're doing it, which is pretty opposite to the way that politicians do things. We're actually taking the time to listen to other people who are impacted in our state. We're taking time to find common ground at the local level so that any policy that we're presenting is actually in line with what the actual people on the ground want. And we're also helping our fellow Americans, Ohioans, Michiganders, whoever, be invited into learning to be a part of this process too, so that they can go beyond voting, or maybe it isn't even is voting, and actually use our governmental processes to create this change.
Yeah, just to add, because Katie is a humble person, but she was one of those people who went out and started listening to what people were looking to do, and they obviously started talking about gerrymandering in Michigan, and within several months she had hundreds of people who were joining up with her. So it's this process of figuring out how do you get to the place where everybody's bought in, they have a campaign they're ready to go after, and then you start to build the grassroots networking in the state where you have a mission that everybody's excited about. And then she ended up with over 10,000 volunteers in Michigan who ended up carrying out that change. So we're creating the organic structure and build up to those kinds of campaigns, and there will end up being multiple campaigns over time. And we also are going to look at other ways possibly to expand in different states. We're looking at the model of finding the campaign like Katie did in Michigan, and then there might be other models where we start to build local assemblies in different towns who begin working together just to get to know each other, and then start to build on a campaign. So we have different theories for how this will spread from a grassroots level, but just know that our goal is absolutely, not just to have a bunch of nice conversations. It's to seed this, create ownership, get the ideas on the table, find an idea that we can go after that will create fundamental change. And there's only so many areas. The 7 things we have that we found in DC, these are the areas we're going to be focused on. It's not complicated. It's about our voices not being heard. It's about agendas not favoring the supermajority. It's about voting. It's about money in politics. It's about kind of the corruption with lobbying and corporations holding all the power. So these are the things that we're going to start taking down piece by piece.
Yeah, and I know that we have a lot of ideas for what we can do in DC, and we will still be doing additional programming to this main focus. But especially because we are a brand new organization and we're just starting, we really wanted to focus on how can we do this well so we really can help replicate it. And we really appreciate everybody who's helping figure that out and craft these things as we go, because we've got to start somewhere, and the more focused we can be, the greater chance for success and the greater chance to do it the right way and have something we can build on and add more programming.
Well, sorry, one last thing just to add to, just because we're figuring out all the different pieces of our special sauce. The element of us spending time together, so anytime we're doing these listening tours or we're having local assemblies or people are meeting in a town hall or they're meeting in somebody's living room, there's always going to be a little bit of a social element of people getting to know each other, people from both sides, that we will be adamant that all of these sessions have political balance. We will never be having any event that is one-sided politically. It won't work. Then people will start to see, oh, this is a liberal thing, or oh, this is a conservative thing. So we will be so diligent about the balance politically and the social element that is going to be so necessary. Because if we don't build that camaraderie, we won't work together well as a team. And we won't have kind of the ongoing element of cooperation that we're going to need over years. So these are going to, if we have a well-oiled army, like it's got to be people who really are, know each other. They want to go into battle together, and we have that political balance at all times.
Yeah, and that's another reason why we wanted to make sure that we were starting with a couple pilot states, really only 1 or 2 in each region, because we want to make sure we're taking the time to build that right, because it doesn't just happen. It takes a lot of work to make sure you're inviting the right people and you're being able to bring in the elements of transparency that you want to. And we want to make sure that we're doing that the right way, so, again, that we have a good base to start off of, but also so that we can figure out what are the ways that we can consistently do this and help other people replicate this so that we can grow and grow and grow. Okay, so now we have a couple more national level updates if we want to click through. For 4th of July, our call to action, thank you guys so much for hopping onto that. I'm not sure if Sarah's on and she wants to give this as an update, but it was really cool because we had a goal of trying to get people across the country to participate. We had 3 of our regions, of our 5 regions, submit letters to the editor, and I think from it we actually had 6 letters, and we had 3 that were actually published online in different newspaper articles, which is great because the stories you often hear or the headlines you often see are, Democrat versus Republican, and so for us to be able to put our own story out there and be able to say, actually, I might identify one way, but I purposely think that I should connect with other people that I wouldn't normally agree with, or I've sought out this organization, and I'm actually dedicating my own personal time and energy to go and, go against that, we're too polarized to work together narrative or story, is really, really important. And so the fact that we already got published 3 times is really, really exciting, and across different parts of the country too, which is also exciting because then it's not just happening in one state or in one place. This is something that can help build momentum across the country. We had a ton of Facebook actions. We had 4 out of our 5 regions participate in a Facebook Live, and I think we had 6 or 7 Facebook Lives total where people showed how they were celebrating the 4th of July and helped talk to friends and family about what this holiday means and also what independence means. We had a total Facebook reach of 1,216, which is really good because I think we only have like 400 likes or something like that. So we really reached out there, and it was up 973%, which is pretty good from our normal activity. So sharing those personal stories, being able to have videos, being able to show pictures, and share the articles that all of you guys had created, all of that led up to us being able to actually get the word out, which was part of our goal for that. So thank you guys. And if you go to our website, you can actually see a recap with pictures and videos of that. Okay. Donor circle calls is another thing that nationally we're working on. So we have 10 different cities that we've identified where we're trying to have fundraising parties so that we can make sure we can continue to fund our work and what we're actually doing. I know our fundraising committee has been working on that, so we'll be coming to you guys with more details as those pop up in different cities if you have different connections. But if you are interested in hosting anything, please let us know. And I apologize for my voice. I'm very sick right now, so I probably sound very hoarse. So the other thing that was really exciting that we wanted to give an update on was our governance structure. So this was something that a lot of work was done at the DC event, but we've also had our governance committee working really hard on refining and creating what can this look like. We have actually a very detailed PowerPoint that is linked to the newsletters that we send out every Friday, so you can check in that. But I took a couple of slides from that to present to you guys now because we actually have opened up applications to be a part of the national board, and we want you to apply. So a big part of what had been talked about and what you guys had come up with is we want to attempt to have a governance structure, so who's going to actually be able to vote on our bylaws and be able to help create the direction for the organization and provide the different fiduciary responsibility and all the elements of being a board. We heard that, you know, even though it's very uncommon, why don't we try and actually be representative, live up to our values of wanting to really include people from across the country. And so that's going to be through a national board. If you look to the side, we're hoping to get between 1 and 3 people per state that can be a part of that. They'll actually serve a term of like 2 years, but, you know, every other year we'll replace 50 of them to try and make sure that we're just getting different representation. And the real role for being on this board is to help represent the activity that's happening in your state. For this first year, it'll be in your region, since we don't have a ton of different state activity happening. How can you help represent your region and also help us continue to move the organization forward? As part of that, we will have a steering committee, which will be 7 to 9 additional people that can help provide different expertise, as well as 2 members from the wider National People Board. They'll be able to focus a little bit more on like the budgeting and the performance review stuff. Then we have our regional councils, which I've already talked to at length, and then we have our wider volunteer and membership. So we're still in the process of figuring out, you know, how do we want to differentiate people who are actually volunteers and members and people who are just like subscribing to the newsletter or, you know, maybe have signed on to things but aren't really active, because we want to be able to go on different decisions and actually vote. I don't know why I put that in quotes, but vote on things and get input. But in order to do that, we actually have to define what are each of these categories, who's considered one of these people, and then how are we going to actually vote. So that's a lot of what we've been working on. You can go to the next slide page.
And just to talk about that for a second, this is very important, I think, that the group from DC would help immediately have decision-making power on major decisions. So the folks who volunteer or apply to be on the board, we hope as many of you, any of you who want to, we hope that you will. We'll talk about the process and how we're going to pick the board members, because we need to make sure that it's truly balanced politically and gender-wise and everything else. But we hope you will apply because this is the opportunity for the people to immediately take responsibility for how well we do and all the decisions we make. So we need you to sign up and apply if you want to.
These are just some of the definitions of those different roles. I've talked a lot about that, so we can go to the next slide page, which is actually about the national board. So from those different committees or categories of boards that I talked about, here's just a chart, and again, you can come back to this and look at this, of when we're planning to meet. So for the national board, which is people from all 50 states and the U.S. territories, we're planning to meet at least 3 times a year, and we're hoping to replicate our May event every year, actually, where we could bring in the people from the governance in person, and then the other 2 meetings would be remote, but on an online call. In September, we could help talk about strategy, and that's where the focus would be. And what do we want our plan to be, and then in January we're kind of looking at the next year for what is our budget, and everybody will ratify what the budget is, and then in May that'll be when we revisit our declaration and really work with our different committees to talk about what changes do we need to make and how do we want to grow as an organization over the year. The yellow triangle is the National Steering Committee, which is that smaller group of people, so they technically meet 4 times. And the biggest difference is in March when they're meeting, they're actually getting a lot of the material prepped and ready for the main meeting, for when everybody is assembling. So that, you know, they're really helping the staff and team refine the budget, the different strategies and goals and making sure that they're taking all the information from the national board and input that they had and making sure that this is actionable items, which is just more realistic to happen in a smaller group, as well as talking and thinking about what other agenda items will we need for our wider assembly. And then the people assembly is everybody who's a volunteer or a member, however we end up defining that. And we're going to try and at least get everybody together doing that twice a year. So everybody can be invited to whatever May DC event that we have for updates, but we were thinking around October, but this, based on input or how the year will turn out, we want to also do a really intentional meeting in October every year where if there's any big bylaw changes, we actually, the governance committee said, yeah, the national board can help prepare that, but we want the entire assembly actually signing off on that final vote. And also giving updates and trying to make sure that we're being really intentional on how can we spend time together. And even if you're really focused in your region or in your state, how can we get talking across the country? We're going to spend at least 2 times a year really focused on doing that well. If you want to go to the next slide page. So for the National Board nomination process, so there's the application link. It's right here. So if you have the PowerPoint version open, you can click on it. It was also in the newsletter. I know Ben is going to be posting about it in the Facebook group if you happen to be in the Facebook group. You can nominate yourself or apply yourself, or if there's somebody else that you know that's a member of the people who you think would be great, you can nominate them too. That's what that application form does. It's very quick. But we are closing the application process. The deadline for applying is by July 31st. So then after July 31st, August 2nd through 9th, we're going to review the applications. As Andrew was talking about, so for reviewing the applications, if you have nominated somebody else, we'll be notifying them and making sure that they accept the nomination, that they're willing to be on the board. So we'll kind of refine all that. We'll look and see, if we don't have representation from enough different areas, we'll probably do some direct calls to people to try and figure out how can we make sure that we are, we have enough people from the West or from the East that are being recognized. And then August 9th through 17th, we'll use our randomized process, which looks at, really the diversity of this group. How are we going to make sure we have regional diversity? How are we going to make sure we have political diversity, age, gender, race, all the things that we took into account for DC for this final board, because I think we would set ourselves up for failure if we just took everybody who applied, because it could be 90% Republican or 90% Democrat, and that doesn't get a beginning group of people who are going to be able to really show and demonstrate our values. Then we'll let people know that they've been chosen August 19th through 23rd, and we'll have that announcement for everybody to look at that slate of people September 1st, and we'll also have our first meeting plan for after that, where they can start getting to So make sure you apply and talk to other people. So here's some committee updates. We do these in the newsletter. I know that our call is definitely going over what we thought it would be. But we'll go through them to make sure that we're giving an update on each of the committees, and also at the bottom of each of the slides it says when their next call is. We also put that in the newsletter that we send every Friday. Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, at thepeople.org sends those. But you can look at it on here. So go to the next one.
Yeah, we'll try and make them quick, but we want you to know what we're doing.
Yes. So we have our governance model. So like I said, if you check out the newsletter, you can see the wide, 20-slide thing. Thank you so much to Terry, who's been doing so much work and helping make it look pretty. That is not a specialty of mine. We also have our first slate of steering committee members. So Andrew and I took a good look at who do we think we really need in order to continue with our fundraising goals and the expertise that we need for legality. Also looking at the different people who've already been helping us succeed so far. And we're planning to send out bios to give you guys more information on who those folks are for that steering committee. I'm hoping by next week we've sent it to the governance committee, I think today, the initial round, and we're trying to figure out what information do you guys want shared so that you can understand who everybody is. A lot of them, if you were in DC, you actually met. So they should be familiar faces. And then We're also going to be working on, they have the fun job of looking at bylaws and how do we update our bylaws, because when you create an organization, you have starting bylaws, but we now need to update those to incorporate this beautiful governance structure that we've created, which just means we have to literally like put in the rules and the language for how are we going to say who gets what voting rights. So next call is Thursday, July 25th. Then we have our Listen, Learn, Action Committee, which actually just met tonight. We have pilot states in Georgia, Ohio, Virginia, and Florida. We are still looking for one more over on the West Coast. So if anybody is interested in doing that, please let us know. And the biggest update for this is we actually have a training series. So anybody who's going to be leading one of the pilot states has to do all of the trainings. These are going to start being weekly on, and they'll be running through the middle of September. We had our first mini one tonight. I believe they're going to be on Wednesdays at this time, but Sarah can clarify that. But these trainings are actually applicable outside of the committee tour. So we're going to be covering things like how are we going to design the budgets for these tours? How are we going to actually design the presentation? How do you help facilitate conversations? That's a big skill that doesn't come naturally. A lot of us, we know our own opinions, but how do you facilitate a conversation? How do we do marketing? And a bunch of other ones. How do we figure out our target audience? How do we look at, we're going to have some policy trainings too. So all of those, we not only need help creating the trainings as we go, but we'd love to invite everybody to be a part of those. Even if your state isn't one of the pilot states, we also could still use help with planning for that and creating the materials for that. So please feel free to join that. Pilot states again, we have 4 regions down, but the purple region, the west one, is the one that we need. We also can do more pilot states in some of the other regions if you're interested. So there's the application link right in this PowerPoint that you can click on. If you are interested in helping lead one of the next slide. Policy Committee has been really busy. They have taken so they took the entire declaration and they figured out, okay, now how do we actually relate this to government policies that impact these areas? So whether it was, our money and politics one, what does that actually look like? So the Policy Committee has already, and thank you everybody for all your hard work, taken the vision section of our declaration and figured out that there were 7 themes within that, and we are going to use those themes to inform our pilot state tours. So they're going to take one of those, like money and politics or voting rights or voting access, and do a deep dive on what does that mean. So what does that look like across the country? In the specific state we're doing the pilot, what are the practices that are being used? How is that state compared to other states? What are the actual policy options for making change on that topic? And to do that, we've broken out into research themes. And so I know that there's the voting rights and responsibility topic, which is one of the important ones, because that's going to be one of our listening for topics that has a strong start. And they actually have a lot of this team is doing research and helping summarize that research and make it so that we can actually use it, and then sharing information about what's going on, best practices, those kinds of things. So we have one of those. We're looking to identify leaders and people who want to help with the other 6 topics. We for sure need at least one of the other topics to be money and politics too. So you can contact Amy and Paige for that. Their next call is Wednesday, July 24th, but you can email us in between if you want more info on there. Social Media Committee, really cool. So they have not only created the social media policy, which we shared in the newsletter and is also in our shared drive, but they've actually started a separate Facebook group where people are submitting ideas for what can we share on our public-facing social media. So our public-facing social media can do a couple things for us. It can help us recruit other people. It can be a place where we help facilitate conversations about different topics, much like we did DC, but with more people than just us, and we can show our great how do we listen skills. And also it can help raise awareness for just other ideas that we have like related to how people can get along, those kinds of things. So they're helping share articles and things into that group that we can then help share on the public page. They drafted the code of conduct, and they're also helping think of different social media campaigns that we can do that can help further our mission. So their next meeting is Tuesday, July 23rd, and you can get more up to that too. Our IT committee, if you have IT skills, if you like technology, if you like figuring out good ways for people to collaborate, we need you. They're right now researching free or virtually free software tools so that we can build up our library of what tools can we use to continue our collaboration and make it more efficient. We just finalized our decision on what volunteer relationship management software we're using. So basically that means what is the system we're going to use to have a database so that when we have organizations that we're working with, we have one place to go and find where their emails are, those kinds of things, and so that we can actually help craft volunteer job descriptions so people can sign up for that. So we chose Neon CRM. You can Google it if you want, but we'll integrate it directly into our website. And so we also need help figuring out how can we best use this system that we've invested in at the local level. How can we use it for committees? How can we make all of our lives easier by using technology? So they're meeting Thursday, July 18th, and they could use more help.
Yeah, this is one area, as you can imagine, this is going to be crucial to how this scales, because so much of this is getting the model right, and then the online piece will be such a crucial piece of how this scales.
Yeah, and we want to make sure that it's easy, and also that if you haven't been able to, like, if you aren't familiar with technology, even getting your input to see, like, what do you find easy? Do you prefer email? Do you prefer this or that? We have to think about all those things so that we can make this as easy as possible to just get the work done, not have to focus so much on how to even connect to each other. Yeah, fundraising committee.
The whole thing can't be run by a bunch of young whippersnappers.
Right? So the fundraising committee, very critical to us being able to continue to exist. They are discussing accepting donations. Who do we accept money from? Are there people or groups that we shouldn't? What should this look like? They've been working on fundraising pitches too. How should we talk about ourselves? What are ways or that we should talk about the organization that you think will make people want to give? They've also been helping create different processes for how to host a party. We've launched our thank you gifts for donations. So as an organization, as a nonprofit, we can't actually sell anything. So we have our thank you t-shirt package now on the website, as well as a wider, sorry, I need to grab some water, wider packages. So they've been helping refine that and talk about that as well as other ideas. So we're trying to figure out what are the top priorities that can help us establish good fundraising practices so that we can help support the efforts going on at the local level. Next slide. This is just an example, actually. So for all of our committees, we're looking to highlight people actually on the different state pages. So this is thepeople.org/Ohio, and if you go there, there's a lot more. There's videos. There's when their next meeting is. But Bill is one of our leaders in Ohio who's helping lead the state tour. And so we're doing a little highlight of who each of you guys are if you are an active member of the people. So we're going to be, we're starting with like the regional council next, everybody who's a member there, and trying to build this out. So if you have feedback on what information you think could be helpful or would look nice, but we're just trying to put more faces with what is going on so that when we're doing more activity at the state level, people can go and actually see, okay, who, I am in Ohio, I want to connect with other Ohio people, who's actually there. Next slide. Okay, so Andrew, I'm going to grab some water, but if you want to give an update on our exciting press announcements, that would be great.
Yeah, so as you can imagine, with the world that I've lived in the past, I'm very familiar with how to get press, how not to get press. We originally coming out of DC, I think we were thinking we wanted to just get maybe an AP story and be able to start seeding this locally. But because we're taking our time in how we're approaching these state pilots, it wouldn't have really helped us, to be honest, to say, oh, let's go get an appearance on Good Morning America or Fox and Friends. And I actually happen to know two of the hosts of Fox and Friends, and I know all the hosts at Good Morning America. But we found that we wanted to get one credible piece that we could really use as a narrative for when we go out and we do our town halls and we do our events, because to be a recruiting piece. So I got to meet with the folks at Nightline, which is a different kind of show because they do more in-depth reporting, and because it airs at 11:30 at night, and they go more for a younger audience. We felt that this could be great for us to do something that wasn't just a 2 or 3 minute piece where they just say, "Oh, isn't this great that people came together and they're trying to change the country." We really want to show how did it all begin. You know, with some of those sessions where people were really angst-ridden, and then the people showed up in D.C. and found this incredible opportunity to work together. We came up with a declaration, and now folks from D.C. are already starting to spread it. So in the fall, most likely in September, we will be coming with the Nightline crew to multiple events in multiple pilot states, showing how this is spreading. We'll be doing a comprehensive story on the start of the origin of the people, the incredible success in D.C. We'll see Katie's example that this kind of change is absolutely possible, that people can do it without the help of politicians, and then showing how the leadership is already beginning to expand into pilot states. So we will be giving you more information where those states are going to be. We're also going to be selecting a small number of individuals from people who are on this call right now, from people who are in D.C., to be some of those storytellers. So they're definitely going to want to find people from the right, people from the left, who were in some of those original sessions with Frank Luntz, who came to D.C., who had hope that we could do something to change our course, and then people who are actually carrying it on to pilot state. So we'll be reaching out to you. Hopefully obviously you don't have to do it, but if you're willing, when we do reach out, we hope you'll be kind of a spokesperson and be willing to be interviewed for the Nightline piece. It'll probably air sometime in the fall. I would expect probably sometime in October.
Yeah, and I think too I know when we did our survey for after DC, we had a lot of people who shared individuals that you met or friendships that you made that were really meaningful to you, and maybe some of those have kept up, maybe some of those haven't. Either direction, whether they have kept up or they haven't kept up, those are interesting stories. And so if you want to let us know too, and we'll be asking people as well, but some of those might be some of the things that are interesting to share, or your own personal journey or understanding of, I had this expectation of somebody else and then they ended up being this way, or, we when we were in person we got along, but since then we haven't been able to, whatever that may look like.
And who knows, we'll decide kind of as a group whether we think we should do more press after that, but that really will become more of a marketing piece, something we can really use, as I said, in all our grassroots efforts.
Recruit people.
At that time, we can decide whether we do want to go on Fox and Friends and do shows like that. It may be worthwhile. It may not really help us that much, to be honest. But we'll see. So I think I want everybody, again, I'm maybe sounding like a broken record, but we are going to make sure, even with our press, that we are making sure that there's no skew one way or the other, that we'll always try to keep as balanced as possible.
All right. So I think we were going to hop into questions, unless there was anything else, Andrew, you wanted to cover first.
I think if we just want to maybe talk quickly about the Facebook page. I know that a lot of folks spent a lot of time on there, and I think that even before DC, we'd use the Facebook page to try to get people to get to know each other, and I think that maybe our good intentions ended up going astray because people felt like, oh, well, we want to learn about the issues and we want to start debating the issues, and so we feel like the Facebook page is probably not the place to be debating. We actually want to have any kind of conversation within the group in conversations like this, where we're actually face to face. where people can discuss things. And then if things start to go off the rails a little bit and start talking about politics or start talking about candidates or anything like that, we can just say, hey, let's get back on to our business. Because in D.C., that's what happened. We never got into tough conversations because as soon as somebody started going astray, we got pulled back into saying, hey, we're not talking, it's literally like family at Thanksgiving thing, we're not talking politics. We're not talking about Republicans and Democrats. We're not talking about who's better, who's not. And so there were a bunch of tough conversations on both sides, and then it became a refereeing thing of like, well, this one says. So I think we're just going to use the Facebook page more as an informational place, a place where you know when the next committee calls are, you know what's been happening, you know what's coming up, but it's not going to be kind of a free-for-all debate place. So I think that's just something we want you guys to know that we're, and that I'm now putting that out there so that if anybody wants to comment on it and say, have a suggestion, but we feel like the connecting and community could be happening more on calls like this, on committees. And if you want to socialize aside from any official thing, that's totally fine as well. But I also just want to mention too that if I heard from multiple people who felt like we were being biased towards certain sides, and we heard the same thing from both sides. We heard people from the conservative side saying, I really feel like you're being biased against the conservatives. And then we heard liberals saying, we really think you're being biased against the liberals. So it was equal opportunity bias that we were hearing from. So anyway, I just want you guys to know, again, this is crucial for us to not get down in the weeds and get down in the rabbit holes of partisan bickering. It's a waste of energy.
Yeah, and staff's going to be focused too on how can we share more of what's happening in the committees and make those as some of the conversation topics. But I think we have so much work to do, and we have spent so much time identifying common ground and also projects and things to be focused on. So the more that we can focus on that and keeping the conversation focused on, okay, how are we helping each other learn how to create and use this process and accomplish things, I think the better. And of course we want to continue to get to know each other, but we can do that through the committee calls, and we can do that through different activities that we're going to do. If you want to have more of a dialogue focus, then let's create that as a program or one of the different ways that we can do a listening tour pilot. But have it focused there so that we can make sure that we're actually doing something besides just fighting.
One last thing before we open it up, I'll just also say there were a bunch of people who were wondering because Katie did an event where she was moderating a panel. It wasn't really a panel, but she was moderating an event that Kirsten Gillibrand, Democratic presidential candidate, was the lead speaker. And so people wondered, well, this is clearly a political event of Democrats. Why is Katie doing something like that? So, Katie was there as a democracy entrepreneur because of her work that she had done in Michigan. She wasn't there because she was trying to promote Democrats. In saying that, sometimes perception is reality, so we are going to be much more careful, and we are going to have a little bit of a filter for any kind of events that we do. We'll run it by people within our group that will be, we will make sure that anything we do that could have the perception of any kind of partisanship is avoided, because we just don't need it. So we just want you to know that that was something that we are aware of and we'll address in the future in any other events that are like that.
Yeah, and to clarify, it was a democracy town hall, and they're hoping to bring all presidential candidates and the president, if possible, to that. So it wasn't an event just for that candidate. It's just the style they're doing it is this is the first candidate, actually the second.
Well, but they're all Democrats who they would be talking to, because the only other Republican they would talk to would be President Trump. But Katie would be happy to do one with President Trump. But I
and independent candidates too, if there are ones who are running and who are willing to come to it. So, and the cool part too is that we were trying to really focus on how do we bring the questions that everybody is generating to the national stage, and how can we do that? And so continuing to talk about that is another aspect of the work we do to. I'm going to hop into questions.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rachel. Okay, so these are some of the questions that we had before. So one was, I'm trying to read it. I would like to see if we can have our gathering to exchange ideas and see how progress is going. So I know I kind of gave this update earlier, but great idea. We'd love to. The week of July 22nd and 26th will begin our hosting of the regional meetings. Before then, again, if we're still looking for different folks who want to hop on those calls, even though we have regional leaders, we'll invite everybody who's in that region to hop onto that call so that we can use that regional planning. These meetings are the first meeting is going to be focused on how do we familiarize each other and who's in the region so we can kind of remind ourselves, because in PC we never really organized by region, so maybe you know who was from what state, but we could all probably use a refresher. And then we're also going to be talking about the projects and goals and concerns specifically for that region. Maybe there's opportunities going on in that region, and where we have an opportunity to highlight something in particular. So that will be happening. Okay. I'm reading the next question. So are there ways to get volunteers in different states to be meaningfully involved when their legislators already do have, when their legislators have policy positions that support what was in the declaration? So I think yes, definitely. We, of course, are focused on people, not politicians, but helping share best practices and seeing, okay, so if they have the right policy stance, has something actually changed in your state? If not, why not? And then what are the action steps that we can take related to making sure that one of those policy suggestions can be taken is a big part of this. Part of our regional approach is being able to do that. Part of the listening tour is part of that. And even if maybe there's some aspects that of the national declaration that your state is doing, I don't know that there's any state that's doing all of them. I don't think there is. So how can we get focused on finding one of the other categories? So like, let's say you're really good on like voting, like the highest voting turnout in the country or whatever. Maybe money in politics though is still a really big issue, or transparency in government spending is still a big issue in your state. Let's focus there. I think it's a good response to that. I'm curious to what you feel are the biggest goals to focus on or achieve by the first year post National Assembly mark on the next Assembly. So I personally, and Andrew, maybe you can answer this too, but I personally think our biggest goals are, one, launching a national governance structure. If we can actually get that, if we can go from a group of strangers to a group of people who have bylaws and voting rights and structure, I think that would be amazing. But I also think if we could have 4 to 7 successful pilot states, and by successful, I don't even mean like they have to change the world at the end of them, but I just mean if we can take different states through the process of the Listen, Learn, Action Tour, I think we will have a huge success, because whether we, had a major flying colors, thousands of people turned out, or even just a couple, we will have learned something and actually tried to do what we set out to do. So that would be my response.
Yeah, I would say we're building something for the long term. Katie built something that was very unique in Michigan, where immediately they were focused on a referendum and an election. They knew what the date was. They knew when they had to get the signatures. So we want to be able to have that kind of energy and that kind of focus on very specific reforms, but we also want to have the kind of the grassroots gatherings where people are really getting to know each other and they're building for the long term, so that we have local people assemblies that are going to be working on things like gerrymandering and probably 6 or 7 other things over several years. So what I would hope in the first year is that we have that model, and how we get to a place where in 1 state or 5 states or 10 states we have local assemblies all across the state. We have a whole structure for decision making on what those missions are going to be, what those campaigns are going to be. Is it going to be gerrymandering? Is it going to be ranked choice voting or open primaries or taking money out of politics. There's going to be a whole host of very specific campaigns that we can go after. And I hope that we're already going after at least one campaign in at least one state, and we have a state that has already spread all over the state, and we have those local assemblies in towns across the state. I think it's very doable, but we're going to have to get it all. We're going to have to test a lot of different theories and a lot of different action items in order to get that to happen.
Okay, agreed. So one of the other questions, is it possible to draw people in for more full participation with the people in a way other than Facebook or the committee calls? How can we bring back a sense that we're all in this together, being an organization that is spread out across 50 states and DC and Puerto Rico? How can we bring the voices of those who are only reading Facebook posts and comments, who don't feel comfortable? I think that's a great question, but I'm going to challenge you a little bit. So the way that we do things as in this organization is by us, the people, all of us, not just, technically, yes, I am paid to be here, but I'm here because I am a person who lives in America and wants this to be happening too. The way that we do things is through our committees and making them happen. So if you have an idea or a thought, because it kind of sounds like whoever asked this question, maybe you already have an idea of how you could personally be involved more. Even if you don't have time to join one of the committees, if you want to send us an email on a program idea that you have, let's talk about it. Like if it's arranging video calls like this with people to talk about a certain topic, or if it's having anonymous comments on different policy issues, or whatever might make you more comfortable, we can totally do that. But the way that we make decisions as a group right now is through our committee structure and being able to figure out how can we create the structure to do this successfully, so that we can be thinking about all the different elements of how do we make sure that there's room for everybody. Yeah, but as we continue to build out our programming, I think there will be more and more opportunities. And if right now, you're not really sure how to help, but you want to still participate, hang in there and make sure you read the newsletter. In the newsletter, we have a weekly recap of the action items that we need help with or that we need input on. And there's a lot of those that we could use. And I think our social media committee, too, is another, and marketing committee is another great place to hop in, where if you like using, if you like typing or writing, leaving letters to the editor, that's all part of our wider strategy that we can help on.
Yeah, I think that idea, well, first of all, in the newsletter, us being constantly making it clear where we do need help and where we could use your help, but also just the idea that everybody has to be a bit patient in this near term while we're trying to get up to speed. We don't have a ton of resources, so we have to be incredibly focused with the resources we have, and we can't be going off in 6 different directions. Even if you may have great ideas that a year from now we totally could do, but we might not be able to do it now because we have to just be incredibly focused on building the model. So literally we're trying to build the model of what this thing looks like before we replicate it everywhere. And building that model car, back to the analogy, is crucial, and that thing has to be perfect before we start to scale. Sorry, my daughter just walked in.
And the next question kind of related to that, which says, what avenues or change are we going to pursue? Lobbying, ballot initiatives, endorsing other initiatives, hosting bipartisan, nonpartisan events, media, etc. Yes, as we've explained on this call, we kind of have our main focus, which is the pilot state for stuff. But that as a big part of this phase is also recruiting other people. So if you have ideas for a local event that can, when we say listening tour, it's not just town hall style, like we might have a trivia night where we're also talking about these different topics. We want to still make that fun and engaging and be recruiting more people to come. So for some of those, I think we have opportunities to do those right now. And then I think once we get this initial pilot up and running, that's when we can start taking on what is the next type of programming that we think can really help move the needle. The first one that we chose was how do we teach other people how to listen to each other, identify common ground, and then build an action. Next question is, can you address concerns that the staff at the highest levels of the people is not ideologically diverse? not talking about whether they're technically registered to one party or another. That's not super meaningful, but rather liberal versus conservative. So one thing is we are somewhat ideologically diverse, but it's something our staff thinks about all of the time. We have since the very beginning. Our direction comes from the actual people who are part of this organization. It's why we have committees and why we make them so important, because we want that feedback and we want to always be thinking about things in a more cohesive way. So as often as possible, we try to use that channel. And we also love hearing feedback and want help on creating things. So always open for that. And we purposely try and do research and challenge each other to think about what are more ways that we can make sure we're being inclusive. How can we put a nonpartisan lens on this? One thing just to note is it is illegal to hire based on political beliefs. So it is not a question we can ask in an interviewing process. Even if we wanted to say, hey, we want somebody who's very different than us, it is illegal to do that right now in America. So, but that doesn't mean that we can't be thoughtful on research or making sure that, you know, we can get people from geographic diversity, things like that. We also have a development plan for each of our staff members and training to make us better leaders in general, especially related to our different focus areas within the organization. So some of that development I know is around like how to moderate, how to create safe environments for different people. Those are all skills we're working to build. And there's also partnerships we're working to build that way. So the National Institute for Civil Discourse, who is in DC, continues to be a partner, and they actually help consult us when we're thinking about, we actually go beyond just even political thinking. We more try to design around how can we design something to represent a democratic process, as in getting the people who are involved to be able to be the ones who are guiding and making the decisions. So we're really intentional on that. So we continue to do that, and we can continue to get better.
I just want to say that many of the folks who you may think are liberal are conservative, and vice versa. I think it was surprising when when we divided up in the room in D.C., and people started seeing who the folks were on the right. They're like, oh, I had no idea. And so I think sometimes we just start assuming people are this or that. I can assure you that when I went out with Frank Luntz to start this by doing those sessions, I knew that the only way that this can be truly successful is if we have a common American project. And the only way we do that is if we take the party piece of this out of it. And that it is truly, everything we do has to be in the best interest of all Americans. That's the litmus test for any of our campaigns, and that we always have to make sure that any state assembly, any national assembly, any local assembly is always balanced, especially the leadership of those assemblies. Even if it's only 10 people in a small town, there's going to need to be political balance in those 10 people. So we're very aware of it. So we're aware of it with the staff. We're aware of it with the board, and we will continue to seek that balance. And anytime anybody feels like we're not doing a good enough job, continue to raise the question, and we'll continue to tell you how we're doing to address it.
Yeah, and I would just mimic, I, especially after our success in Michigan, had a lot of different opportunities, and the only reason I wanted to go and do this is because working in a nonpartisan way was so meaningful personally for me. It was a way that I could take my friends and family who do not agree and actually work on something good for the world, and it was extremely inspiring to me, especially after 2 very long, tiring years of getting gerrymandering ended in Michigan. And it's part of why I want to be here, and not just with one of the typical organizations that doesn't take the time to really be intentional about that, or maybe says that they're, you know, nonpartisan, but they aren't. That is, I have absolutely no personal interest in being a part of that. And we work hard to do that, and can, of course, always get better and always want to. Okay, next question. So we kind of already answered this, but I think I'll re-answer because Sarah brought up a beautiful response for me, because I had asked her to earlier, since she's the head of our social media committee. What is the purpose of our Facebook page? As many have told me, they're turned off by what seems to be a page just talking about random political posts, which is not what it should be. So the asker of this question said, so what should we be doing in the Facebook page? Which is a great question. The closed Facebook group that we had originally was used to provide info for DC has now transitioned into our internal working group. So we really want this to be action focused. This is a space for all of our members to connect about the work we are doing, discuss committee meeting details, recaps, action steps. We can continue the committee conversations into that group, and then update on events and actions that we are taking. Talking through issues related to our declaration. So sometimes when we've been making decisions, we put a poll up in the Facebook group and actually say, hey, you know, like, what would you guys prefer on this? Or like what, like I think Paige just did one for fundraising was, you know, which fundraising ask do you like the best? That kind of information is really, it's a lot easier for us to ask on Facebook. Sometimes we're gonna go and email everybody on our email list, but if we can just do a quick poll, get some quick feedback, it makes us better and it's really, really helpful. But what we've been finding is a lot of that ends up getting buried because there's so many random posts getting thrown in there to talk about topics that are not in any way related to action that we're actually taking. This is not meant to be another page for arguing. It's not even directly meant to be about finding more common ground on new issues. We covered a lot in DC, and so although we might want to create programs or opportunities to go and do that, that's not the purpose of that Facebook group. That Facebook group is to connect on what are we doing as an organization to move forward. And we also have our official Facebook page, which, like we said, the policy committee right now is sponsoring some topics to actually talk specifically about issues, and we'd much rather you go to that public Facebook page and help comment your ideas related to those issues. We post articles that some of you guys have shared with us on the public Facebook page, and we try and word the discussion in a proactive way. And that's where we can also help raise awareness with other people, which leaves our internal Facebook group, the private one, more focused on the actual work getting done so that that doesn't get lost, and then our public one can help show people what does it mean to actually engage in a dialogue that way. If you're really motivated and like finding articles or you have a lot of ideas for different topics we could discuss, please join the social media committee. Please help them generate content. That's a big part of what they're starting to do. Okay. And so the last question I have, unless there's any more that have come through and somebody can just tell me, is actually about the public Facebook page. So they were saying that we've shared some good articles, but that they don't feel like it's frequent enough. And in order to be successful in engaging and growing our team, we should be posting more often to generate initial interest and then bring those newcomers in and help them get connected to the organization. We completely agree. And then the person says, can you have staff member man the organization page daily to engage newcomers? So we completely agree. Part of what we found that we need help with is creating that content, which is why we created the social media committee page, the internal group that you can be added to if you join the social media committee. And we just need help finding the good articles, helping frame those conversations. And our goal is to make it more consistent and with more content. We just wanted to make sure we were in line with you guys on what types of information do you feel like would be useful, and how do we want to use that public page in a way that is true to our mission. We just want to make sure we're in line with you guys on that, but we would love to have your help with that. So I know that was a ton of talking from Andrew and I, but does anybody else have any other questions or comments, concerns? I know.
I think it was long, 90 minutes, but it was worth it for our first one. They'll be a lot tighter in the future. I think we've had some growing pains. It's normal. I really do feel like we're a family. We're for better or for worse. We're the ones that have launched this thing. So for everybody who's still here, and for everybody who watches this tomorrow, that fire we lit, like, we got to keep it going. It's going to take every one of us to give whatever we can, but most of all, give us some patience, give us your hopes, and let's keep at it. I guarantee you, the next quarter update, we will be announcing what the pilot states are, and we will be in action mode in those states.
Thank you to everybody who's commenting on the thing. I was just commenting back. And thanks for saying thanks, too. We appreciate it. We do try and work really hard. And if you feel like you haven't found your right fit in the people yet, or you have extra time that you want to be donating but you're not sure how to, please, you can send me an email directly, Katie@thepeople.org, KATIE@thepeople.org, or anybody else on our team, because we have a lot of projects and even leadership roles and things that we could use help with that we don't have enough people for. We're trying to channel that through the committees, but we would love to find like a custom fit thing for people to help us make some progress on some of these issues. And so being able to have a one-on-one conversation where we can really talk about where's your interest, how much time do you have, would be really helpful for me too. So I'd love to do that. Tony, I'm looking at you.
Just one last point just on that. We need more people coming into the fold. So anybody who you know who's great, who has some time, who would be totally into this kind of thing, if you can give them the pitch and hook them in, especially as we start going to these states, if you say, I know somebody who's great, who would be a great organizer or somebody, please let us know, because we need to start expanding the family.
And a big part of what what the staff has been talking about doing is with our new management software, like we were talking about those volunteer job descriptions, we're going to try and get really specific too to say, like, we need a graphic designer if anybody knows somebody who is one of your friends who might be able to do that, or we need somebody who is a teacher or was a teacher, so that they can help us make sure we're thinking through how do we create this presentation in a way that will help people learn. All that kind of stuff we're getting more and more details on so that we can find the right people, whether they're part of our initial people or whether you guys have other people we can bring into the fold who would be really great at that. So we'll give you more opportunities that way too. Also, thank you for your time with me Wednesday night on how to talk about making our democracy better together and how can we come together to actually make country that we want. I find that extremely inspiring, and it was really cool to see. I think at the highest point we had 37 people on. So just thanks for being here. All right, Anna, I'm using you for your graphics. But anyways.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Have a super night. We'll talk to you all soon.
We'll talk soon, and we'll be sure to post this, and you all can encourage your other friends who came to DC to watch this who weren't on the call. So thanks again.
I hope your okay page and your door is better.
Yeah, Sam fixed it, thankfully. I'll be fun to release, but thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.